As part of this tutorial, we're going to use all of the skills that we have discussed in previous tutorials and a couple of new ones and end up generating a map. All the previous tutorials have been working in the data view. The final end product of this tutorial will create a map in the layout view. We'll be working with the Bruton zoning that we did in tutorial 3, and we want to make an 11 by 17 map of the entire city with that zoning. So we will begin with a blank ArcMap document, and as always, first thing, set up your data plane. We know we're in Bruton, so we will choose Alabama West, and we'll start bringing in the features we want to use. Navigate to your location where the features are stored, and we'll bring in our layer file that we made in tutorial 3 so that our symbologies are already there. And because if you notice this parcel, there are gaps, but we want to go ahead and show the city limits. We also have the voting districts for the city of Bruton, so let's bring that in and put it on top. And notice those gaps are gone, but there are several different polygons. So because we want both the zoning information and we want the city boundary, but we don't have it, let's make the city boundary. So we will create a new feature class, go to catalog, right click on the folder, new, and shapefile. It's going to be a polygon. Let's call this Bruton City Limits and assign it Alabama West and hit OK. And we'll bring that in. Oh, it's already in. Now this feature is completely empty at this time, so let's go ahead and start putting some stuff in it. Beginning editing session. Come over to create features, ensure that that's selected, and we want to do a polygon. Now because we've already got these basic shapes, we're going to do the traceability. So we're going to begin our feature on our editing toolbar, select trace, and then we're just going to trace all the way around this thing. This could be done with a line feature, but typically I will use a polygon if I know it's going to be an enclosed shape, because you never know what you may want to do with it. And the idea of GIS is to create things that can be used over and over with a limited amount of effort. So we're going to trace that. I'll left click to end it here, right click and finish the sketch, and there we go, and clear it out. Now as we talked about before, there's no transparency assigned to this, and now that it's traced, we can get rid of the voting districts. So I'll remove that. Now for our map, we don't want this to be a colored area. We just want it to be an outline. So let's go ahead over here and change this to no fill, but let's give it a bright, let's go bright red and give it a higher weight. There's our boundary, and there's that. You'll notice that some polygons are outside of that. For the purpose of this example, that's going to be sufficient. So we're only going to have these two feature classes. Now when you're wanting to create a map, it's good to have the names of the layers, what you want them to be called, exactly what you want them to show when you create a legend. So we're just going to change this to say city limits. You can click on the icon twice to change it, or right click it and then say, I thought you could say rename, but you can't. So just click it twice and change the name. So we're going to change this to Bruton zoning. Now everything we've been doing is in the data plane. pane or data view, we're going to move over to the layout view, which is Paperspace. And notice that here the default is 8.5 by 11. You can change this shape to anything, to several prefabricated paper sizes or layout templates that you may have already created. Now, as I stated at the beginning, we want to have an 11 by 17 landscape of this. So I can come up here on my layout toolbar that we added at the beginning of all the tutorials, and over here you can change layout. In here you can see all the different prefabricated layouts, and they're nothing more than Paperspace with a data pane in them. ISO shapes, North American, and then here at the end are some of them that have some base data already included. Now you can also, under My Templates, have some templates that you may have already made. For our case, we want to do the 11 by 17 landscape view, and I'll click Finish so you can see what it does. And notice that we've already got a border, a data pane, and our titles, CDG logo, and pertinent data over here. These templates and a couple others are stored on your hard drive. If you would, if you have not already, go to your M drive, which is the Engineering CAD Standards folder on that server 7. Under the ArcGIS folder and templates, there are these four templates that we have already made. You will need to copy these to your hard drive. So select them and copy. Go to your Start button, Computer, and we will navigate to where ArcMap is looking for this data. You can copy it like I just did and paste it, or you can type in this path or drill into that path. I'll go ahead and drill in so you can see it. So we want to go to your C drive, Users, and J Adams, which will be your username, Application Data, Roaming, Esri 10.1, Desktop 10.1, ArcMap, and Templates. And this is where you would paste that data. We'll give you a few moments. Go ahead and pause the tutorial and copy those over to your drive. Once they are pasted, you can close out of the Windows navigation panes. Now that you have the templates on your hard drive, I'd like you to go to My Templates and select 11 by 17 landscape. Hit Finish, and it will bring in that border that we talked about earlier. Now borders, if you click the toggle draft mode, include the data pane, which is the data pane, and whatever pure drafting or text that you've included on it. If I took this data pane, turn off this, and selected it and dragged it up, that's all that you'd be able to see from our data view that we're in. So I'm going to reload that template to fix that change I just made. And now you've got the basis to begin your map. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in a little, try to maximize the paper. Whoop. You see what I just did. On the layout pane, these buttons are for Paperspace only. So you can zoom in on the paper alone, zoom out, pan around, and then full page. If I used zoom in and zoom out on this, these are data view properties. So if I zoom with this one, it zooms in the data pane only. And we know that this is a rather north-south shape, so it's very hard to maximize the paper space. You're going to have a lot of white space, but for the purposes of this exercise, we're going to leave north as up. We're going to leave north as up, but I'll show you now how to rotate this view. You can rotate the view of the data pane, not the paper space, by utilizing another toolbar. Go to Customize and Toolbars and Data Frame Tools. I'll dock that over here beside my layout. This allows you to rotate the data frame, either doing it manually or by using some of these integers of rotation. Now that we've rotated it 90, I'll zoom in. You may have noticed that in this layout, this north arrow is a smart object. It rotates as you rotate the data view. So if I change this to 40 degrees, you'll see that it rotated the north arrow. So let's change it back to 90. See it? You have to be very careful and make the decisions on how you want to rotate this. Most people, when you see maps, think north is up. So now that I've showed you how to rotate it, for the purposes of this exercise, we want to leave it at 0 with north is up. So now I'm a little too close, so I'll come over here to the zoom out, and zoom out a little, and then try to maximize it again. There it is. Now, we have our zoning data, but we have a lot of white space here. So let's add a base map to fill in that data. We're too far out to use aerial for aerials to be of much use. So let's just use some road information. So you will go to File, Add Data, Add Base Map, and we're going to use the Bing roads. You just select it and hit Add. Give it a moment to pull the data from the net and refresh it. And if it doesn't show up on its own, you can always hit the refresh button. And force it to refresh. And there's our Bing roads map. For some reason it zoomed back out, so I'm going to tell it to zoom to layer. Every time that you pan or change, depending on the cache size on your machine, it will take a little while to refresh. So just some basic road information here. Now there are roads under this data, as you can see when I turn it off, with some road names on it, but you can't hardly see them. So let's add some transparency to our zoning. So we're going to right click and go to Properties, Display tab, and let's change it to 50% transparency. And that might be just a little too transparent, so let's lessen it down to 35. And there we go. So now you have your city limits and your parcels with the zoning information. Well, to us, making the map, we know what that is. But to everyone else in the world, they have no idea, so you always have to add a legend. Adding a legend is an automated process in ArcMap. You can go to Insert, a Legend, and then pop the Legend Wizard. On the left-hand panel, will show all of the layers that you have in your map, and the right are the layers you want to show in a legend and the order in which they will be displayed. Typically, if I have a symbology layer, I'll put it after layers that have a single symbology, but it's completely user preference. So I have the two that I want. You can remove them and add them back in and move them up and down in the order. I'll hit next. This is pretty much normal. I'll change this so that it's centered, and I want it to say legend at the top. And here you can select, using this style selector, some prefabricated borders. We'll use the triple graded. And a background. Now you always need to assign a background color if you do not want to see what is in this data pane through the legend. So I will choose white, select OK, and hit next. Leave these as the default for now, and finish. And it inputted the legend. You may say, wow, that legend's huge. I don't want it to say zoning 1, and we don't want it to show this zoning 1 and Bruton zoning and all that. Once the legend's in, using the element selector, you select the legend, right click on it, and go to its properties. And there's several different tabs. This is the same, what is being shown in the order. Under the items, you can now change the symbologies. That says city limits and just shows the border, which is the way I want it. But Bruton zoning is a little large, and I don't want it to say zoning 1 here. Don't want it to show the column header. So I'll select zoning and hit the style button. And here in the legend item selector are several prefabricated legends, types, symbology types, and we want to go to layer. We want to show the layer name and the label only. Hit OK. And when I hit apply, you'll see that it changes over here. So Bruton zoning and the label. That Bruton zoning is still really big, so you can come over here, choose it, and then when you hit the properties button again, you can change any of these texts that you want. Change the text style, text height, so forth. So let's change this down to a 12 and make these a 10. OK, OK, and OK. And because we did that, let's check our city limits and see what text height that is. It's a 14, so let's change it to a 10 so it's the same as the other. And OK, and OK, OK, and OK one last time. You can see that it made things a little smaller. Wow, that is long, right? And it looks kind of funny on the page. So let's make this into 2 columns. You select the legend and go to properties. Under the items tab, you can select the item you wish to edit. You can tell it to start in its own column, and you can also tell it how to begin, how many columns to have. So let's make it 2 columns. Hit apply. You can see what it did. Now the kicker is here that usually when you do that, you will begin the item in its own column, because you see that it does not repeat the heading. So let's select it and place it in its own column. And we're getting there. We've got our legend. Now even if the thing's still too big and taking up too much space, you can always use the grips and drag it down a little and make it the size you want and move it around on the sheet to wherever you want it to be. Whether you want it in the top left, bottom right, and so forth. These texts that came in with the layout are nothing but simple text elements. With the element selector, you can select the item, right click in properties, and you can change the text. We're just going to call this City of Bruton zoning map. City of Bruton. And Bruton, Alabama. This CDG logo should come in with your layouts because it is saved as part of the document, so you shouldn't have anything to do with that. If you're working in a different office than is in the template, edit these to your appropriate address. I would recommend doing this in the template file so that way you only have to do it once. And we're going to zoom in Paperspace on this corner so we can see it a little clearer, and edit this as necessary. So simply select it, right click, And I'm just going to put my initials here and change this to November 2012. And then we'll use the zoom to paper extents whole page to view it. So there we have our map with our city limits and our zoning. You can bring in, now that this is set up, you have it situated on the page the way you would like it. I would recommend creating a bookmark. That way if you go back to data pane, add more data, delete data, or need to zoom in on something, you will be able to reproduce this. So go to bookmarks and create a bookmark, and I'll just call it layout. Now that we have our map document the way we want it to be, we want to either print it or typically to export it to a PDF so that you can print it over and over. You can, in most programs, you go to File and Print, and we'll select the Adobe PDF printer. I would not recommend doing that in ArcMap. If you do not want to print directly to a machine and you want to make a PDF, you need to export the file. So you will go to File and Export Map as a PDF. Here you can set your DPI to 300 or 600. Default is 300, and then just tell it where you want to save it. We do not want to save it there. Call it Bruton Zoning. Just hit save and it will export the map, and you'll see down here that it's thinking about it. And the export's complete. Once the export's complete, you'll be able to view the PDF and then print it. And of course, what usually will happen is you'll end up playing with some colors, because what you see on your screen does not necessarily come out on a printer, and every printer is different. Once all that's done, save your map, and that is making a basic map using the steps that we have learned before. That ends this tutorial.